Hello, and welcome to Property Matters, a hopefully lively and engaging debate about all matters property designed to be of interest to anyone who has an interest in property. And Property Matters is sponsored by Fairview International and, of course, Town and Country Property Auctions London. Plenty to discuss as always, and we'd love your views, especially this week as we've got some real interesting topics to discuss. So please post your comments in the comments section below. And of course, have your say in how the programme looks by getting in contact with us on propertymatterstv@gmail.com. And always, of course, subscribe to the channel, whichever one you're watching, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook, so that you get notifications of when we go live every Sunday morning, just in case you should ever forget, perish the thought. So please get in touch with us during the show today. We'd love to have your views. Joe, good morning. Welcome.
Morning. How are we today?
Enjoying the fact that we're waking up firstly in the daylight and with a little bit of sunshine today compared to yesterday.
Yeah, I did catch that shower yesterday. Obviously gave my nice new wet hair look a new look altogether, but that's the story.
It has been noticed. The fans are certainly impressed, that's for sure. Right, let's have a look at some of our stories today. And I thought we wouldn't start with stamp duty because we've done that for so much of the year so far, but it has dominated the headlines, obviously. But I wanted to look at this new research, which is quite interesting. Some of the detail is quite fascinating. And this is from Strutt Parker, and they've basically published their annual housing futures report this week. And it looks at what consumers really want from their next home and how they might want to live in the light of events in 2020. So the survey covers 2,000 people across the UK, and it looks at their motivations and influences, and that includes what home features that are most important to them, what they want, how they want to live, and how they want to commute, and how environmentally friendly they all want to be. And this has been running since 2014. And in those days, the motivations were around demographics, finance, lifestyle, and location. But there are now, they're saying, 4 other considerations for people. And those are technology, community, environment, and mobility. So people are looking for amenity-rich locations where they can walk to the shops, be part of a community, and within easy reach of friends and family, which sounds like the set of EastEnders, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a bit like Albert Square. It just doesn't move very far, does it? Really, it all happens in the same place, same time, but from a different angle. Yeah, I think it's a great subject, Paul, to bring up on board today, and it's something that I've been actually looking at. But actually, when you say some of those things, sitting here, I'm reflecting back. Really, in reality, that none of those have changed in time. They're just a newer version of what we are all looking for. When you think back to the high street, for example, which has been decimated in recent years because of online shopping, but there is a clear message that people still want to try and go and visit that. Now, albeit it might be a slightly different thing. It may not be always about fashion and clothing and shoes and so forth, but certainly other things like the right kind of eateries, brasseries, modern style of where they can go and socialize, network, outdoor and indoor, al fresco or not so. All of those things are now the things that people want for for communication, for access, for ease. It still says that the town centre of any town is still an important hub for people to actually be able to go and sort of integrate, congregate, if you like, and just mix and so forth. And so that is one of the subjects that obviously one of the points that has been brought up there. And the other thing, of course, is the communication side. And that's been, one of my little messages for a long time. In fact, I've stopped saying it because there was a wager out there. And people said that they were putting bets on how many times I'd say it. But I'm glad to say that, what I was saying and thinking some time back is actually, now coming out in surveys. So I was a little ahead of the game, obviously, by comparison to what the surveys are being brought out today. But these are needs. These are the things that people want. They are looking at conveniences and what the way we are now working, the things that are required.
Yeah, they say 45% of people say they'd love to be closer to nature, but it's still that urban living that has the greatest appeal. So 29% still want to live in a big city, but that was only 12% 5 years ago. And 17% would prefer to live in a town. Only 10% want to live in a village. But I guess that's when you're thinking about it, this is the millennial generation that there's been focused on here, really. So this is like 30 to 40-year-olds, something of that nature. So really, I suppose that's not surprising, is it?
No, I mean we laugh about it, but I've made my sort of facetious comments on the millennials that if they actually didn't have to get out of their bed to do anything, that they'd do it. You know, it's just conveniences of everything. The smartphone will tell you that Uber Eats will deliver their food. Amazon will deliver. You know, the bits that it's just far short as to how to actually go to the bathroom. I'm sure somewhere along the line a technology will be invented that you actually don't need to go too far to do that. But other than that, yeah, the modern way of living is very much that it's got to be easy, it's got to be convenient, it's got to be able to be done on the palm of my hand with my smartphone. But when you actually break it down in terms of what people want at a different age, a different time of their life, those things start to vary quite a lot. And I suppose when we're all younger, we all want to have the access, the ease, the comfort. And that's why the village life is not quite there. But once they move into that situation where they say, okay, I'm going to settle down, I'm going to find a partner, I'm going to, start a family, all that sort of stuff, then the village life and the country life starts to be of interest. The thing with the country life and the village life has actually just been fast forwarded in the last year for other reasons. And whilst those reasons are still prevalent in some parts of the world, here, with the policy and the direction that the government has been doing, they managed to bring the numbers down. The R rate is down, so people are feeling more confident and comfortable, and beginning to sort of think, well, I can go and go out and mingle again. And therefore, for the last year, though, we've always wanted to sort of get out to the walks, get out to the fresh air, and those are the countryside appeals. So that's been fast forwarded, perhaps for a short time. But I think the town centre living will definitely come back quicker than you think. It's already happening. I happened to be in London the other evening, sort of late afternoon over the road towards Paddington. I had to go and look at a property there, and it didn't feel different at all, Paul. It just, it just was like it was. It was mad in traffic, lots of people buzzing around, lots of bars having everybody standing outside. Of course, they couldn't put them inside. Fortunately, the weather was just about holding out. But it's amazing the extent we go to freeze just to go and get a pint. And I was just smiling as I was driving through. I'm thinking, my God, where did this whole thing go? And this will be a distant memory before we know that these are the areas that we live in. But human nature says, I want, and I will go out and get, and that's when it's going to happen.
They've identified a new breed called the Miko. Now, the 20% of people in 2015 said they were a Miko. This is now nearly 40%. So this is a growth thing. So this is really interesting. This is young people who want health and well-being to be at the centre of their life. And that includes the property they live in. So they want it well designed. They want it environmentally friendly. They want good architecture, good technology. And interestingly, these people, the ones that, as you say, they want an app for everything, they also say that they're quite happy to buy direct from farmers. They want to buy and grow their own veg. They want to buy milk in reusable bottles. They want to drive an electric car. They want a well-insulated home. And it's fascinating that although they have an app for everything, some of the old values, and they want a local convenience store, like a grocery store. So it's kind of interesting. They don't want the high street as is in the big brand shops, but they're quite happy to have local amenities where they still go out and pick up the veg and the milk and stuff. Interesting thought.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing on that, as far as the high street is concerned, Paul, the point I was trying to make about the high street is that there is a hub that is required in every town, no matter what we say. There is a center point. But I've noticed that a lot of the outskirts, what used to be secondary shopping facilities, are actually now acting as the hub because of their convenience. Exactly the point they're making. They want something close by so that they can have access to eateries, and bars and whatever they want to get to, instead of having to go to the problem with the high street has become as a thing is actually parking is a huge issue with that, and people want something where they can actually access just by pulling up parking, getting what they want and driving off, and that is a huge thing. I think we're all at fault with that. I mean, if I know personally, if I'm going somewhere, I can't find a parking space, I'll go to the next spot where I think I know I'll get a parking space, and there might be a near shop or another location. If it means I've got to get into a car park, which is 6 inches too short to try and get out of the door and bash your car, I'm just not going to do it. So they really need to rethink the whole strategy, especially with electric charging and so forth, that comes into it. So I think the demand for that change is getting higher. But the point I'm trying to make is that it actually hasn't changed a great, it's just evolved in a different way. We still like the idea of accessibility to local hubs, call it communities, call it shopping centers or secondary shopping, where all those are available. We want to have the well-being, so good parks, good parks to run around in if you want to walk around. Equally, the new developments that have got to be put together have got to have, and a lot of the ones in London we're beginning to put in gyms and saunas and so forth that do it. But I noticed that a lot of those things, they have a short lifespan. They get bored, and those things are just sitting there waiting because they still prefer to go to a greater gym. Mostly, I think, for connection, for connectivity with other people, other humans. Even if you're just wired for sound and running on a jogging machine, you still want 5 others jogging with you, because it makes you feel as you're part of some sort of community. Whereas if you could do the same thing at home or in a gym at the basement of your block of flats, and you're the only one down there and nobody else is bothered, that sense of community, I think, is still the wish and the want. Whether pandemic has been there or not, we still want to know that there are people around us.
Interesting that in the 30 to 34-year-olds, 72% would prefer to buy a new build than any other type of property, which is really interesting. 72% would be quite happy and wanted to live in a new build. Compare that with 19% of over 65s. Quite interesting.
Yeah, and that again goes back to convenience, Paul. The new build has all the things that people want. The younger generation, they look for simplicity. They're just they're working all day. They want to go indoors. They want to have a nice shower, clean up, order their takeout, watch whatever's on the telly, and then maybe go to the nearest bar and have a few pints. That's probably the order of the day. Whereas the older generation are probably then looking at, sitting in the garden, maybe, turning over the soil to make sure the spuds are doing all right at the back. So it's a completely different want that will happen. But, it's never changed in 40 years. The system has never changed. The system in the United Kingdom has always been that start to finish type of scenario. People start with maybe a studio or a 1-bedroom property, be a flat or a house or whatever, and then it's a 2-bed to a mid-terrace, semi-detached, end-detached. There's a process that takes you to the detached property. The question is the detached a modern detached with a meter between you, or a detached with some acreage around you? But ultimately, there's a system that takes you to that sort of level, and with it comes the change in life and the wants that we want.
They're interesting. They're saying that, or it's interesting that they're saying that actually what's happened is that people's aspirations to move out to the countryside haven't physically changed. What's happened, the pandemic has brought on that change sooner. So the people that have decided to move out and want to move and get that extra space and be out in the countryside, they would have moved anyway. what's happened is that the pandemic's brought that decision forward a number of years. Those people that still want to live in the cities still want to live in the cities. They still want urban life, and that figure has actually grown to 29%, which is interesting. Most popular places, of course, London, South East, and then, interestingly, West Yorkshire, South West Yorkshire, Humber, and the North West came in all equal third. And people are prepared to drive 10 miles, up to 10 miles, or commute up to 10 miles to get to work. So it's still quite a local knit situation.
It is, and it's interesting the areas that you point out. But when you look at the south and you look at places like London, you know, economy-wise, from an economic point of view, London will get a battering all the time because it is the centre of our UK hub. House prices tend to shoot up there very, very quickly. They level off very quickly when people can't get into the country. And it's probably the benchmark that starts to set the rest of the country on fire in terms of value and prices. So if London is doing really well, people are selling in London, moving out, sprawling out into maybe the outskirts, what they call the stockbroker belt, the West London, Surrey borders, all of those things that start happening, they start to move out that way, and then it spirals on to where those people are moving. And the north has become very, very popular over the pandemic year, especially because all of a sudden people want the space, and value for money, what you can get is tremendous in the north. So that has become a real desirable point. And as you say, Yorkshire is a beautiful part of the world anyway. So all of the big cities in the north have been doing really, really well in terms of prices and in terms of value. But more than that, it's value for money. What they're getting, Paul, is you know, I mean, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said that quite shockingly, for 130,000, 140,000 pounds, what he's getting in Yorkshire or up in the north is a far cry when you think that for 130,000, 140,000 pounds, you might not even get a studio here. And they're getting almost like a small holding in some cases. So I can see that. An interesting conversation with that particular guy was this, that he said that he is a delivery driver, and a delivery driver is getting the same income in the north as he is getting in the south. So he said it doesn't really matter where I'm going to be delivering. So I might as well live somewhere where I'm going to actually enjoy the countryside and get the benefits. So those are also driving factors. What jobs have changed. The job structure has changed now so much that people can work from home. And it's still statistics showing that I think even after this pandemic, a good 25% of the people are still going to now work from home, as opposed to, you know, thinking I'm going to rush back. Yes, there is a wish and a want to rush back because you miss working with colleagues and you have that banter and the sort of camaraderie that you are all working together. But there's a big advantage now saying, well, actually, what am I traveling in for? Well, do I need to go in? So can I do this? What can I do this next week, and so forth? So, you know, those desires don't change, and the north has become more and more attractive because people are getting a better value for money.
So what do we think the top joint desirable features in a home would be for this generation then, Joe?
Well, my internet has got me at the top of the tree.
I'm talking about more physical space elements in the house. The technology will come in a minute, but in terms of
you need definitely the study area. That's a big demand now. That's coming. Garden space of some sort is important. I think because people want to be able to sort of literally walk out and stretch out, or nearby, you know, park or something where they think they can actually have accessibility, and of course more sort of family space, I think is quite important, and facilities in the building, perhaps of some sort of leisure and well-being.
I'll list them for you. Here we go then. So the top two most desirable features in a home for our new generation: a utility room and a second bedroom. It's kind of not surprising. That's the first one. 34% want that. Downstairs loo or an ensuite, 33% want that. You were right about the dedicated working space, 28% want that. But you won't ever in a million years get the fourth one. It's fantastic. 19% of these people want a walk-in wardrobe.
Well, there you are, I see. And the next
Not
thing
even
they'll
a Jack
want,
and Jill bathroom.
no, but the next thing they want is a electronic gadget controlling what suit they're going to wear, and it just kind of pops out, and say, here you are, this is the one you're going to wear today.
Well, these are the sustainable features. So this is like your internet. These are the things that they want. 57% want double glazing, high levels of insulation, smart thermostats, solar energy, rainwater barrels look on there, heating materials that are eco-friendly, wind energy. Those are the things. And the things that they have, smart speakers, home security, smart smoke detectors, smart this, smart that. And the most desirable feature in terms of technology is a smart leak detector. Did you know that, Joe?
Smart what detector?
Leak detector.
A leak
To
detector.
monitor your vegetables.
I told you that, didn't I? That's what they're going to go for.
46% of people want a smart leak detector. Detached properties, 41% want that. Semi-detached is 21%. Apartment, 19%. Only 9% of people want a terraced house, apparently. 3 beds, the most popular, with 34%. 28% want 2 beds. 22% 4 beds. And just 7% want the 1 bed. So if you get a 1-bed terrace house, it's a pretty unpopular place to sell, basically.
I think we should be giving that as a shopping list to every new developer that comes along and says, I want to go and build a property. We just should download that list and make it as an attachment to then say, well, when you're considering building, here are the wants and the wishes on the wish list of the people that may be considering buying your property. Because but I'm sure that will change as time goes on. But certainly this last year, or when people have been sitting at home, they've been thinking, I'd love to have this and I'd love to have that. So it's a good list to have.
Yeah, I just thought the whole thing was very interesting and just a different subject area for us to cover, which we haven't really covered when we've been talking more about the money side of things. But that said, let's get back into it, because we're never far from talking about the cash.
I was wondering how long you're going to keep stamp duty off the list for me today.
I want to come at this one with a different angle, though, because as we were saying, it's a topic we cover many times, but there is another interesting angle to this. So mortgage approvals are actually down in terms of the number of approvals. 87,000 was the figure in February, and in March it was 83,000. But they're still significantly higher than pre-lockdown. So February last year it was 73,000. So, and mortgage lending has just gone in March to 11.3 billion pounds in a month. 11.3 billion, which is the biggest amount of lending since records began 30 years ago. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you look at what the BBC said this week, or rather the Bank of England, which the BBC covered, about the fact that the economy is going to grow by 7.25%. Also, this is Faisal Islam's, who we both know, his great piece that he did this week. 150 billion pounds worth of extra savings. This is extra savings that we've made. So during lockdown, we saved an extra 150 billion in our pockets. So we got that money. Chancellor reckons that we're going to spend about 10% of that. So that's got to be the reason why we're feeling pretty bullish. The economy, obviously, the Bank of England suggesting it's going to be the same 7.25% growth. And yet, despite the property market benefiting from that, there's still plenty of doom and gloom merchants out there saying that the second half of this year is going to be pants. Doesn't seem like it from where we're sitting here.
Well, the doom and gloomers are important to have, Paul, because they balance the scale very, very quickly. You have to have a little bit of doom and gloom, and they won't feel better unless they have a bit of doom and gloom, because they've got a job to do, and someone has to make it sound as like, hang on, get down to earth, we're going to have a crash and a disaster. And sometimes, occasionally they get it right, but the facts are the facts, and the reality is that I think the Bank of England is only encouraged. We know, and we've been through the scenario where the leader has said that he wants a generation of buy, not a generation of rent. And we also know that throughout the pandemic, people have saved more than they have imagined that they ever would do, because places have been closed and they can't go out and have the lunch at the cost, of course, at the cost and the detriment of those businesses. Those businesses have suffered tremendously. The hospitality industry is not on its knees, but it's probably flat on the floor at this moment in time. And so yes, we all want to rush out and help them, but the reality is that that saving that I've been having, and I've been sort of giving it a ballpark figure of £100 a week, that's still £5,000-6,000 a year that they've managed to save, which they probably wouldn't have done. And so the numbers are right. Faisal is right in saying that there's so much money that is saved. Where have they spent that money? We know that we're going to build out. We've said that's part of the reason why Property Matters is a popular program. People like to listen to us, and we look at it. We talk about this because this is what the best investment is going to be in. This is your home. This is where you're going to make money. This is where you're going to get comfortable. All these discussions we have. And the statistics and the figures point out very clearly that the housing market and the building is what is going to be going to get us out of all the money that the government has spent. And that's why the Chancellor knows that a certain percentage of that saving is going to come back to it. And where's it going to go? And then it recycles itself, Paul. It recycles itself because we do buy these properties. And of course, every industry you can think about is come off that. And I've often said that we are the hub of the bicycle, and lots of spokes come off of it. And that includes all of the DIY industry that then starts. And of course, if the DIY and the feel-good factor at home starts, then it goes into, you know, what you're going to cook, what you're going to do in the garden. It just goes on and on and on. So property is the one single place, one thing that everybody and anybody wants to be part of. And the Bank of England, the governor, is clearly pointed out that he sees that market in the right way. You know, in the next couple of years, we'll be bouncing back to the growth almost back for 2 years ago, because that's where it is. And look at the statistics just over the last 24 hours. You know, people have gone out in hordes and supported a government that has supported them. It's, you know, it's clear that that's where it is. I mean, the odd blip here or there, but 99.9% of them, they've gone and supported because the government has supported the people of the country.
And another little fact that's come out this week is that at last, following the fact that all of the parents were homeschooling during January and February, and then they weren't too sure about vaccines, but now they're seeing the rollout being very successful, you'll be pleased to hear that the supply is starting to, or is set to increase. So supply is going, I don't think it's ever going to quite reach the demand that's out there at the moment, but people are gradually starting to think about putting their homes on the market, which has got to be good news.
Yeah, and you know, just I mean, going back to your little stamp duty subject, there is a huge audience now, Paul, that is beginning to say, you know, we're not going to buy until the stamp duty is over and done with, because the pressure is too high and too many fall throughs have happened. And there are more properties going. Spring, summer is normally and traditionally the time when people tend to think, okay, my garden's looking good, the front's looking great, I've done a good coat of paint, I want to sell, I want to move to the next property. And this year we've been fast tracked because some people have found it that they've actually got properties that may be just a little too small because they don't have the facilities that they want and they desire, and that has become more paramount during the period of pandemic. For example, the utility room. You know, I can go back and say that there was a time when your Sarah Beanies of this world told everybody to knock every frigging wall out just to create space. And that became a trend. Well, I can tell you now, everybody wants a utility room. They want to study. They want a separate dining room, because guess what? If it hadn't have the dining room, the kids were not allowed to go and sit on a computer in the other room. It was all open plan. So the utility room became an issue because now the washing machine's going whilst they're trying to have the lift. It all became backwards. So the traditional semi-detached property with 2 reception rooms, the utility room, and a couple of bathrooms is definitely what is the order of the day. And that's something that I think all builders will need to consider going forward. And that's what the properties that are coming onto the market because of the summer and the spring, you know, will raise the trend in people buying home. Buying a property in the United Kingdom is still the number one wish list subject.
Got to go back to something we first touched on last week. It literally was launched, pretty much the day before, 2 days before we came on air last week. So we didn't really get much of a chance to cover it in any detail. But this new breathing space legislation for tenants with problem debt. So from last week, from the 4th, I think it was, all Section 8 eviction notices in England and Wales must include details of the government's breathing space debt scheme. Paperwork must be up to date to include the debt respite scheme announced last year, which gives tenants with problem debt the right to legal protection from their creditors for up to 60 days. They reckon there's 700,000 people that this might affect, Joe. So it's perhaps bigger than people might have thought.
Yes, it was a subject where I touched on very, very briefly, literally, because it came in. I know for a fact, Paul, that a good number of my clients are buy-to-let landlords who have properties, portfolios, where they've got a number of tenants in there. The law has been very supportive of the tenants. Singularly, it's probably a single reason for pandemic. Definitely, there was law changes only last year several times when notice periods were changed from a couple of months to 6 months, and primarily because the governments foresaw that it was going to have problems if people were going to be not able to pay their rent. They were going to be out on their ears, and then they would have been knocking at the government's door to say, you got to rehouse us. So what they did is they stopped everybody in their stride and changed the law and said, you've got to give them 6 months. This here is another part of that legislation going forward, because there has been a number of people that have probably not paid their rent or have had the benefit and chose not to pay their rent. So what they've done is they put a curved ball into the situation by saying, if your paperwork is not up to scratch and you haven't had a dialogue and you haven't given the right notices and you haven't had the conversation with your tenant discussing this new word called breathing space, considering breathing is all about pandemic. Now we call it breathing space. And so you haven't had the notice. What's even worse out of this particular legislation is if somebody says that they have a mental health issue, which I'm sure there will be, it's endless. It's not 60 days. It goes on until that, as long as they've got a doctor or a consultant telling them that they've got, mental health issues and so forth, and they've got to be supported. The landlord has to support that.
Yeah, it does say when creditors such as landlords are notified about a moratorium debt, they must pause enforcement action and freeze all charges and fees and certain interest for duration of that moratorium. And landlords will be notified by the insolvency service when they will receive all the future notifications. So basically, their main point of contact will be the insolvency service, who will then tell them what's happening. So they basically take control of the whole thing by the sound of it, which is your point.
Exactly. And the problem with that is that is not just the fact that they take charge of it. The landlord is stuffed. He's just going to have to sit there and wait with somebody who's in the property, so forth. So I strongly urge all landlords to really, get your files, your whole scenario in order before you can actually go out there and deal with this. And obviously, if you've got to appoint insolvency services, it's probably, I use the analogy of the best form of defense is attack. It's maybe that you've got to do it rather than the tenant's got to do it. Because if it goes to court and the paperwork is not up to scratch, the court has the right to throw it out. They just say, no, it's not. And then you get another court date. So just think of the backlog of all the people that have you could be there for another year before you even actually see sight of your property. So very, very important, very dangerous scenario for landlords. And I think, you really definitely got to seriously think about how you do it. And that creates a problem, Paul, for them wanting to buy and invest in buy-to-let properties. Because they then say, hang on a minute, do I really want this hassle if the tenant's got all these rights? So they've got to rethink how that structure is going to be and how they want to continue to rent or monetize the properties that they've got. And there are other ways that we could do it, but of course, give me a call and we'll be happy to discuss those other opportunities that do exist.
Staying with the rental market, and this might be a reason why the hassle might be worth it in the long run, because rents apparently are hitting new highs. So we have a record month of rental increases. So the average rent in the UK now is £996 per month, and that's the fifth month in a row that it's increased. Although rents in the capital have fallen year on year 5.3%, and that's every month for 11 months that the rent in the capital has fallen. So this is good news for landlords, really, because rent is rising certainly in line with prices, if not slightly ahead of prices in some regions.
And the rents are rising and have been rising on the outskirts of London, primarily because of what's happened in the last year. Equally, they've slowed down in London because people just haven't been able to get here. Even now, people come into the UK and they've got a quarantine for 14 days and so, or 10 days, whatever the rules are currently. And that deters people to come in because it's an extra cost that they've got to pay. But given the time, and time is a healer, given the time, it will get back to that thing and the rents will come back up in places like the cities in London. And for obviously in line in the countryside. So yes, there is a respite for landlords in the sense that rents are good. Rents are good if they are coming through steady and often. It's just that this current situation is going to backpedal them. So if they haven't had the savings or haven't had a contingency plan put in place and they've been living from hand to mouth situation, then that is going to cause them problems. But if they have the facilities, that they've got income sufficient to cover perhaps one or two that are going to be bad apples out of the dozen that they may have, they might be able to support that and get that through. Unfortunately, tenants will tell you even the bulb is not working. They'll phone you up and say, my bulb's not working. It doesn't make rocket science to go down the shop and buy another bulb, but they believe that that's what they should be doing. So landlords are cautious, but investment in property, without a shadow of a doubt, is the only way that I would ever recommend. But yes, you just got to think about the whole structure and make sure your house is in order.
It must be frustrating for those that are renting and trying to save a deposit to buy, because if you look at the average rent outside of London, it's $853 a month. That's up 6.2%. And if you were down in the southwest, your rent will have risen this last year by 8.6%. So that's faster than the prices of the price of the house that you're trying to buy. So your rent's rising faster than the price of the property you're wanting to buy, but you can't put the money away to get the deposit.
Yes, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, really, isn't it? Well, what comes first? And that's where the Bank of Mum and Dad has been a tremendous supporter in order to help the first-time buyers to come through. But the government have put in some good schemes currently with the Help to Buy, 95% mortgages, and the opportunity to get onto the ladder. So whilst those are there, in terms of rent increases and percentage increases in value, there are opportunities around the country that now offer people to step onto the ladder. So, the Lord giveth with one and taketh with another. That's just one of those things, really.
One last point on this. If you're unfortunate enough to live in the northeast and be a renter, your rent went up between just March and April. Your rent went up 2.4%, apparently. So that's quite something in a month.
It is. And as I said, the north is popular, so people are shifting up there.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely the time to pick up a property in the north. And last bit of news this week, something which we kind of knew was going to be the case with all the political situation in Hong Kong. It's now reported, of course, massive interest in buying London property. So we were talking the other week about no one's been able to come to the UK to buy property as a foreign investment, but looks like that hasn't stopped the Chinese coming from Hong Kong, or those with a British citizenship, of course.
Yeah, no, I mean, Hong Kong buyers have been around for a while now, ever since they've had their issue back in Hong Kong as far as the political issues are concerned. And the Hong Kong Chinese who have a British passport or the right to come to the United Kingdom have been coming in their hordes and buying investment properties and buying companies and assets. And it's quite surprising to know what they actually have shares in. which is quite a thing. Look, money from foreign investment is always a big driver for the United Kingdom, and especially for London. And that's why, whilst London prices, people wait in the UK for London prices to drop. In 40 years, they just come to a correction. They've never actually fallen out of the bottom. There's always someone there. And this last year, people haven't been able to come over. But next year, the year after, the market there will change dramatically. People will come back. They're picking up things on corrected prices. And foreign investors, especially from Hong Kong, have got the door wide open for them to come in, because that's the rule of the government, to say that anyone that is part of the ex-British colony or whatever it was, that has the right to come in and invest, and that's what they're doing.
Broadly speaking, twice as many properties were sold year on year in London to Hong Kong residents. Something like 1,900 homes in the UK, in London, I think it was, which is interesting and I guess inevitable too. So it's quite an interesting week on the news. We we had some comments earlier on. Leak detector, absolutely the number one thing that I want in my home, a leak detector, says Suki, and and the number of good mornings to us both. So it's nice to see some comments in this morning. Leak detectors all round, I think it is, Joe.
Yeah. Well, say no more.
And let's have a look at property of the week, which of course we like to do from time to time when something of interest comes up for auction. And you want to talk about a place in Market Raisin, I believe, Joe?
Yeah, so I thought, we've been covering the north for a while, and we've also covered self-build opportunities, and value, and of course country living, and all of. So this, I thought, kind of brought everything to a climax, if you want to call it that. Here is a plot of land in Market Raisin. Now, fortunately, I have had the opportunity to be in Market Raisin. There's a race course there, and we had a small holding for sale there recently. So I had the chance to go and visit Market Raisin. Beautiful little village environment. It's got everything, including, I think, a local Sainsbury's or something like that. But look at the size of the plot. It's a lovely sized plot. Corner, it's a bit of a cul-de-sac spot. The property has been started up to its and the chap that has it, his business, amazingly enough, has taken over his time. And so it's not the lack of the money, it's just the lack of the fact that he just hasn't got the time. He has a bicycle business, and believe it or not, the race for bikes and the race for space has gone a bit bananas. So he's very busy, and so he thought, well, he'll get rid of this. So it's up to damp course level, 4-bedroom detached property to be built. The garage is up to the walls. £180,000 is a guide price. This is your self-build, detached, new technology, including leak detector, can be put into it. and a lot of house for the money, lots of space. Look at it, hardly any neighbors, and probably a damn good internet service too. So give me a call and go and have a look at it. There's no big issue about viewing. You can see there's nobody there, so go and have a look at it and make me a bid, an offer that we just simply cannot refuse to sell. Go and build your own house. Here's your dream house.
Is it not a property that could be, or an area that could be developed into a development of properties? It looks big enough, or is that not permittable?
Yeah, but it's got planning for one, Paul, and so this is an opportunity for that person who thinks, I'd like to move out, travel somewhere easy, and have my country living. Great opportunity.
Yeah,
Don't always want to add loads to it. Just want to have the chance to build your own home.
So people can get in touch and talk to you about offers and things ahead of the auction, but it will come to auction ultimately if it doesn't sell before on the 13th of July.
Absolutely. Give us a call.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's just think about. We were talking about DIY earlier on, weren't you? And you were saying about the fact that this is the perfect time to do that. What are the best DIY projects that you can take on to add value? Do you think, Joe?
Well, I wanted to sort of cover that, Paul. That's what I was saying with the DIY side of it, was that basically the time of the year is right. Market has been good. People are looking to sort of put the spring in their step, going out towards how they're looking at houses. And the DIY market is this time of the year is probably the busiest. So it's a great time to get the outdoors dealt with. Especially your gardens, cut the grass, cut the shrubs back. It's quite amazing when I drive through some parts of the country that the places that bother to look after and the ones that don't look after. And always will continue to say that it's important for you as it is important for your neighbors all to work together, because when house prices are gauged, they're not just gauged by the fact that the market is doing well. They're also gauged by whether people want to live there. They want to live in that road. They drive in there and they feel that this is a nice road and I'd like to live here. That makes a huge difference. In fact, it's probably in the first 10 seconds of them driving up to your house, they made a decision whether they actually want to be there or not be there. So DIY and this opportunity of getting your gardens done, getting your windows cleaned, all those things about your house, and the gutters, and anything that is going to make this is the time to get that done. Of course, it'll be a great support to our retailers who have suffered quite a lot. Not necessarily the DIY stores that have suffered, but the add-ons, and then of course there's the decorating side of it from the outside. So do take this time to step back and look at what it is. In the next couple of shows, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take some random pictures of things that I think are nice and the things that I think they could have made. And you will make your own judgments as to why people should step back time and time again. And I have this beef not just with private property, but I have it with commercial property more so, that you pay a lot of rent to have that space in the high street or in the town. And your whole outlook from the front looks pretty dire because you just haven't bothered to step outside and say, maybe I'll get it cleaned. Even the shop window sometimes, is not clean. And people still haven't learned from the pandemic that this is the time to go and get things clean, because we need things to be clean, because we don't want the virus to continue to spread. But people haven't done it and they haven't utilized it. So my message really is that you step back outside, look at what you've got there, do the basics but nice things, clean up. I love seeing when I go through a village that the local villagers have got their sort of those sticks that they pick up the rubbish and see how many people drive through and throw their cans and their McDonald's and their Kentucky Fried bag when they've eaten just out the window for somebody else to pick up. It's just not nice. And I think it's important that we all take this on board, because it actually affects all of us. It affects your area. It affects the value of your home. And it's very, very important message that, don't be part of the thing. Try and sort it out and sort out your own roads and your own areas, because it will affect the value. You will be surprised how much that would make a difference. I should have put up today a property that I've taken on in Fallsbrook Road in southeast London. I should have done that. That was a good example. I've got a property there basically that's come onto the market, and the guy there has just let it go to absolute rack and ruin. We'll put it up next week, Paul. I'll send you the pictures. And the property adjacent to it, brand new, it's like a white holiday home terrace in the Costa del Sol somewhere. And then you've got this mess next door that obviously, doesn't help the sale. And that is a good example of what I would say is what not to do when you've got a property. But you're going to get some neighbors who just don't care. But it's up to you as people to sort of say, try and work with them and try and get it done. Or camouflage the damn thing, put some trees outside and hide it. because it's just not nice to do. So DIY, this is the time to go out and just take a look and do the basics that you need to do to make sure that the value of your home remains at the level it should do. And it's only up to you to do that.
We had a question in today, actually, Joe, which is quite interesting, which I want to just really touch on with you. And that's from Suki. Joe, in auctions, can the seller, the client, dictate the auctioneer terms of the sale, such as charging inflated bidder's deposit or a particular bidder or buyer?
No. The terms that are set out at the outset, the clear terms, Suki, and the bidder has the opportunity to bid to the level that they want to bid. It may not be. And of course, the auctioneer cannot sell if it hasn't reached the reserve price that we are governed to sell by. Everything else is as clear as it can be. So yes, there are other methods of sale, which I did bring up a couple of weeks ago, and I don't endorse those methods, where auctioneers will put a whole bunch of costs on buyers to do. I run a traditional auction with a traditional view, and as far as I'm concerned, everything is clear and transparent as to what they do. Anyone that's not sure about it should always pick up the phone and ask, and we will clarify it. But the method of sale by auction is definitely a good method. It's not necessarily set out for properties that need doing up. It's just a method. And the client, whatever terms we have agreed are not dictated by the client. They are a unanimous agreement between the client and the auctioneer, and based on what it should sell for in the marketplace. So hopefully that will help that question. But anything else you need to know, please feel free to call me directly, and I'll be happy to answer those questions.
Super. Couple of good mornings this morning, just to say good morning to us, and we're all off to go and get a smart leak detector, aren't we, Joe?
Yeah, well, I mean, the leak detector. Actually, Suki is a developer. So Suki, you've got a new list coming, mate, and in it, of course, is the leak detector. So make sure that there are something like that is put in the next home that you build for them.
Yeah, I'm off to do my DIY. I'm going to put in my smart leak detector. And on that bombshell, Joe, thank you so much indeed for your contribution as always every week. It's great to hear your wisdom, and hopefully our stories that we featured and the debate we've had today, Joe and I, has been of interest to you watching. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next Sunday at 10 a.m.